You did indeed hear a bunk. I'm getting the live stream up. There's one viewer waiting on live. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's Daryl. He said he's been very busy lately. I hope it's Daryl. I miss Daryl. Although I appreciate anybody who shows up. Daryl or not Daryl. Anyway, let us get started. You ready? This is the Techno Buffet podcast, episode number 594, recorded Thursday, July 28th, 2022, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So, well, maybe I should pick a more appropriate song for, since we missed each other last week, for your vacation. So how was your trip? So you were there with all the turtle egg laying? Do not touch turtle eggs. Yeah, you don't want to scare the turtles. Let me see. What did I do that was exciting over the weekend? Is it depressing I have to think about what I did last weekend? Couldn't have been that interesting. Well, during the summer, I think I've mentioned the local community center has their they have shows from like Memorial Day through, not Memorial Day, Independence Day through Labor Day. So last Saturday night at 10 o'clock, I was sitting in the community center. They had a double comedian act. You know, comedian number one followed by comedian number two. And that's actually where I was in the community center a little while ago, because somebody came up to me afterward and said, well, the normal person who runs the soundboard here, which is a community volunteer, isn't here. The person who originally set up the system for us isn't here. Could you come next week? We're doing a trivia night. Could you just bring a laptop and hook it into the television, and so we can do this, like video trivia game? So I said, okay, fine. I have an old laptop, and then it turned into, well, we don't have a television. It broke. We're buying a new television. Can you come and install that? So I was over there with a 65-inch Fire TV that they got on some sort of lightning deal, and then I tested it, made sure that it was hooked into the sound system for the room, and I'll go back on Saturday night before 10 o'clock and set up their trivia game. So that was where I just was. So I ran in, hooked you up so that we could talk, and here I am. And so we missed each other last week. I'm trying to think, did I do anything of interest? Let's see, where were we the last time was I still working on apartment-y things? Because I think I told you I got all of the smart switches installed in my parents' apartment. I think that was before you left. Okay, well, the electrician finally showed up while I was there. So I went to their apartment because the contractor said, I talked to him and I said, if I, upend my life and come there to help them put stuff back in their apartment, will you be done? Because I have to book a ticket. I can't just drive here. He said yes. So I came and he still wasn't done. So I didn't get very much done while I was there, but when the electrician was there, which he was there while I was around, I got him to install smart switches all over the place. Unfortunately, since I had to leave when the apartment was still uninhabitable, they work, but they aren't connected to anything. Yeah. Me personally, or my relatives who did this? Yes. I pointed out that there should have been one. I did not see the contract before it was signed. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And the original contractor did have a date. Unfortunately, that's the one who skipped town. Uh, and that is the sort of thing that I would have suggested had I been there when the contract was signed. No, I understand. As I said, I didn't. I'm trying to be helpful to family members. I wasn't there for the negotiation phase. I just asked the guy, I want to come and help them put their stuff back into their home. Could you tell me that when I come, there will be a home to put their stuff back into? He said yes, he did not deliver on that date. Anyway, that said, I'm really happy that sometime in the abstract future I will be going down there and installing all of the smart stuff. I got everything configured before I left. So I came back to New York, and here I am working on some other projects. I've been doing troubleshooting on my weather station with the manufacturer. They said, take the weather station down, open it up, take a picture of this, this, and this. So I did that. I put it back together. I put it back up on the pole because the problem is it loses signal and I have to power cycle it in order to get the sensor to start working again. So I sent them the pictures. I said, could you also take a picture of this? I said, so you want me to get back up, take it down again, open it back up again, take a picture, put it back together. Is there anything else you want, picture-wise? No. So I said, it's raining. I'm not. When it's a nice day, on my day off, I will go take it down, take your picture, and send it to you. But please tell me you're not going to ask me to take any more pictures. They told me no, but I don't believe them. Anyway, so as I was telling you just before we started, I also got my first smart dehumidifier. Well, you know how they just put smarts in things just because? I'm just, you know what yeah, I think it is inaccurately used, and I'll agree with you on that. So in this context, when we're talking about smart, we're talking about something that has a computer chip in it to communicate with the outside world. So what ended up happening was I work, when I'm hanging around in this location, I work and do my personal things in, you might call it a man cave. I have a room in the basement that isn't being used that I've set up as an office for when I'm here. So I have my apartment, which is one office. I have my office in my parents' place, and I have a different one. So essentially everywhere that I've been broadcasting the show, I have a space that I work out of because I need it for my job when I'm working and then for whatever personal project. So here it's in the basement, and the basement has been getting musty. I have humidity and temperature sensors all around because usually my problem down here is that it gets cold. Different problem. Although 2 years ago I had to install an air conditioner because it actually got into the 90s down here when Last week when it was really hot outside, it also got. But anyway, the humidity was off the charts, and so I went to my father and I explained this to him, and I said the little dehumidifier that I have in there, which is like a desktop one, isn't working. He said, well, I have one here that I'm not using. Why don't you put it in there and see if you could dry out the room? So I put it in and started running it, and I was running it for about half a day, and then I said, well, I better find the manual because I don't know what these buttons do. I want to make sure that I'm setting it to turn off when it gets to a certain level. So I went and found the model number on it and Googled it, and then found that it had been recalled as a fire hazard 2 years earlier. Yeah, so again, the entire basement was musty as well, so I moved some sensors around and found out that pretty much a lot of the basement was in the 80% humidity, which is not good for a basement. So I went and looked at all the other dehumidifiers and found out that several of them were of the same model and had been recalled. By the way, they're giving me $60 a dehumidifier to destroy them. You know how much a good basement dehumidifier costs? Would you like to guess more than $60? A halfway decent one is between probably minimum 200 to 300. So I not only replaced the two that had that were fire hazards, but I also bought a third one to put in this room, the office that I work out of. So I was able to find this one that's a slightly different design, but it essentially is Wi-Fi connected, and somebody said, well, why do you want a Wi-Fi connected one? I don't really want to turn it on and off. It has enough the chip inside it that most modern digital dehumidifiers have will maintain a humidity. The reason that I want this is that it will actually give me a notification when the tank fills so I can go empty it. So far the tank hasn't filled. So it's currently about 86% humidity outside. In this room, it is about 54% humidity. So it's hopefully doing its job. Problem is it does heat up the room a bit. Well, they all do. Remember, they're essentially they're fans with compressors attached to them. They heat up. Either way, yeah, it's a lot better down here. So now I'm trying to figure out are there any interesting, other than the fact, because I was able to get it integrated into Home Assistant, other than the fact that I can turn it on and off, which isn't really helpful because it's like 5 feet from me. Other than the notifications, which is what I really wanted, are there any other interesting automation type things I could do with it? So far, I have not thought of any. But yeah, no, it does that independently. So you set it has a digital display. You set it to a certain humidity percentage, and it will shut itself off essentially it'll shut the fan and the compressor off and turn it back on when it goes above that. So there we are. So that was my smart investment. I'm still working with the smart switches and related things, but some of that is on hold because I'm not anywhere where I can do that right now. I have to wait. What did you do? Okay. You test it. Yeah. So you also, yeah, so it worked out. I do not have I have a RoboVac that goes around, but I don't have one that's connected. I just turn it on and let it go. One of these days, my floor will be clean enough that I will feel comfortable letting it go on its own without supervision. Why not? Yeah, I have to do the compromise because I don't have a bed sensor, which is I have remember Sleep as Android. It has an MQTT integration, so I just have it when I start sleep tracking. It starts my sleep program. When I end sleep tracking, it ends my sleep program. You can do anything you want, Jerry. You, yep. Yeah, I know I had a conversation with one of those companies. They were very reluctant to open up their API. So unless somebody reverse engineers it. Yep. Well, maybe they'll do something like that message that you sent me just before we started. You found an interesting website. Yeah. Yes. I will call it George and I will love it and hug it. Yeah. Right. I know George. I have one in here and it's not going off. Hey, George. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this isn't an API per se. It's a gateway between their SDK and a simple REST API. So it's a bridge for people who, because you could always integrate the SDK itself, but this is easier because it essentially creates a gateway. And I have a bunch of these running, if you remember, on various systems, where I have essentially a gateway that creates a bridge between X and Y. Like I have a gateway running for the that connects to the UFI cameras and exposes them over MQTT, or no, that one's a REST API. The Z-Wave to JS thing is an MQTT integration. So again, this is a very common thing now, to take a thing and then expose it through another interface. So what do you want to do with this, though? Because I was looking at it, I'm wondering, I really want to see what have people done with it that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so I've set up the other way where I have my Home Assistant devices controllable via George, but I've never done it this way, which is integrate to devices that support the. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to think of what I might do with that, but I'm sure all of us can think of opportunities. So, moving on with Home Assistant, apparently Leviton has joined the Works with Assistant program. So, this is one of those programs that came out recently. Home Assistant announced that they would start a Works with Home Assistant program where you could say that your devices work with Home Assistant. So, apparently Leviton is one of the first ones they've advertised. So they made sure that their Z-Wave devices will work with Home Assistant. The problem is you still need the Z-Wave integration, which is a little different than some of the others that work natively. But yeah, the idea is that they're going to make sure that the Z-Wave integration, they'll be responsible for maintaining compatibility. That's what the Works with Home Assistant program, and Leviton is their first partner who gets to use the little thing, and they're using the Works via Z-Wave with Home Assistant, so that's like one of the little labels, along with Works via whatever. So the program idea is, let me just get it because we talked about it. It requires manufacturers to maintain the integration of their products, offer a good user experience, provide product samples, and give an engineering contact to escalate issues. So here, Leviton doesn't need to do very much for their Z-Wave devices, because remember, there's a Z-Wave integration, which means they just need to make sure that the profile and everything works with that integration. Yeah, well, it doesn't take that much, because all they have to do is say, if there's a problem, we're going to answer you. We're going to give you a couple of samples to test, and we're going to make sure that everything works. Now, this is just for their Z-Wave device, but, they have Zigbee devices, they have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices. So we'll see. I think so, because it isn't that much of an effort on their part. What I'm still waiting for, all those switches I flashed, Martin Jerry is the company that makes them, and they have been coming out with a SKU for pre-flash with Tesmota, and they're supposedly working on one for their fan controller, which they've switched off of the ESP line of chips for their fan controller to one that can't have things flashed. So this time they have to have a separate version of the board. But if they do, I could actually get a fan controller without having to break out a flashing jig and like hold it with my hands and a clamp and press a button and try to get it to flash. Which, as you might imagine, is not my favorite thing to try to do. Well, again, I'm not saying that it doesn't occasionally gets me a good controller, but still. Anyway, moving along, we have a lot because we missed a week, and it was busier than some weeks when nothing goes on. Apparently, Google is giving a lot of attention to its tablet apps. Remember, for a long time there, most of their built-in apps did not have a good tablet display. So they've realized that it's hypocritical of them to say that they want to work on enhancing Android on tablets and their own apps don't have good tablet experiences. So apparently they are doing the Google productivity apps, so like Drive, Docs, Sheets, Slides, and they're going to essentially be updated with side-by-side views for tablets and a few other things. Now, it's also useful if you have one of those like Chrome OS tablets or foldable screens where it would have the same size and you would want to use the tablet version of the app also. Yeah, so a lot of good ideas. If you are a fan of Google Play, and remember, we've been doing the show for so long that we remember when Google Play wasn't Google Play. It was the Android market. It's been Google Play for 10 years now. And apparently in honor of that, they needed to do a new logo because, of course, that's what we all care about. Yeah. We. So, moving along. I put in an article, how to make sure that Google Chrome is your default browser, just in case anybody wants to look at it, because I can never remember where to set it. I had this really interesting experience. I think I mentioned to you that my employer finally gave me a new computer after some years. And they issued a bunch of people computers, and we have some software that we used to have software that only worked with Internet Explorer, but now we have software that doesn't like Internet Explorer and works with Chrome but doesn't like Edge. And I had to go and show everybody on all of these computers how to change the default browser, and then it would say, "Are you sure you want to switch away from the wonderful experience that is Microsoft Edge?" So I thought I just put this in because this reminded me that Microsoft remember they had a lawsuit years ago about making Internet Explorer the default browser, and they had a settlement in the United States, and apparently nobody's enforcing that anymore because they're once again using what do they call it, dark patterns. Yeah. Okay, you're clearly more tech savvy than the people who I have to explain this to. I would tell you the most ridiculous tech story that I experienced at work. And remember, I'm not in the IT division of my employer, but I know computers, so people ask me things. The most ridiculous story I would tell you, but I'm afraid that person. Actually, I'm not really afraid that person might listen to this podcast, but yeah, I don't like to tell stories like that embarrass people. Anyway. So there's an interesting other article from The Verge saying that because of all these redesigns in streaming video apps, they all look the same and you can't tell them apart. I thought that was sort of interesting. That that was what the people over at The Verge decided to talk about, which is the design of all of these apps is no longer innovative. They all look the same. Moving on, Google Wallet is back. So essentially, we had Google Pay, we had Google Wallet. We keep going back and forth between the two, and nobody at Google can seem to pick a lane. So apparently the new Google Wallet will focus on being a digital wallet, and apparently Google Pay will focus on like mobile payments. Now the simple truth is, I never was interested in mobile payments, but I was interested in the wallet thing. I'm not sure if I'm interested in having a digital ID or digital car keys in a Google Wallet, but all I wanted was in the Wallet app, which was I wanted to store a couple of bits of information. So glad it's back, and hope that they don't try to change it again, because how many times can I deal with that? If you are a user of the Amazon ecosystem, which would be she who will not be named, apparently Amazon says that Matter will make that system better. I still haven't actually. That is their idea, yes. Yeah, but I still don't see enough Matter devices coming. It's been a long time, if you remember. So. I don't think it's a chip shortage. I thought it was the standards that they were having a long time with. Chip shortages are a different issue. No, I'm saying that they didn't. The reason we're not seeing products is that they didn't really finalize the standard. So, global supply chain issues aside, it meant that we really couldn't get a sense of what was coming and how long it would take to come. They kept pushing back the date, not because of shortages, but because they didn't have it ready yet. I also like this next one. So, Alaska Airlines will let flyers use digital bag tags to save time and paper. So, I always like interesting technology stories. So they're going to be the first U.S. airline to roll out supports for electronic tags, which are programmable devices with e-paper displays that are designed to replace the paper tags. So it would probably be better if we ended up with something like RFID tagging, but this is essentially you buy it, it's going to give out 2,500 of them for free to their frequent flyers, and they'll be available to purchase. The really annoying thing is, what if they rip it off your bag? Now you have to pay how much money to get a new tag? Yeah, but well, no. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a bag damaged after being checked by an airline? Okay, it doesn't matter. You know what type of abuse bags go through when they're traveling. Also, if you've heard, it's not every day I read these stories about how because of various labor shortages, etc., that airlines are not necessarily being as reliable with luggage as they have been in the past, to be sort of vague about it. But I thought this was interesting. So BagTag is apparently the manufacturer, and it's used by some airlines outside of the U.S. And the model that Alaska is using is programmed over NFC by holding your NFC-enabled device next to it to transmit the information. Neither have I. I've had some interesting experiences over the years. I know one time I got hit in the back with a bag, which is one of the weirder things that happened to me at an airport. But other than being hit by my bag, it's... Anyway, so I'm just interested in this because, as I said, I like nice technology, and this looks like a nice little thing. Also, I don't see enough e-paper stuff. I don't know why e-paper doesn't catch on for things like this. I'd like I'd like a device like this to put on my desk, like a programmable device that I could send an image to over NFC, and it would just stay like that forever. Well, not forever, but like for long periods of time. I could see uses for that. Anyway, I look forward to seeing what's going on with this. So, moving along, apparently after there was a public outcry, Google will be reinstating the Play Store app permissions list. So we talked about this, I think, briefly, where they were replacing the permissions list with the privacy section, or excuse me, data safety section that was more human readable, but it was more human readable because the developer writes it, whereas the permission section is automatically generated based on what permissions they added. So apparently, people were complaining that one of them was objective and the other one was running on the honor system. Yeah, no, they do. So Google essentially said, "We understand. We will put it back." Again, I will at least. I'm not saying that Google always does the right thing, and increasingly in the last few years, there have been a lot of things that have annoyed me about them. But I think their biggest problem is that they don't always realize what will make people angry. So it's sort of this difference between, and I've always sort of compared them to Meta, aka Facebook, where Facebook knows that they're doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing and does it anyway. Google just seems to be completely like out of touch and disconnected. If there's somebody at Google who realizes what's going to happen, clearly they're not listening to that person. Anyway, moving along, Google Meet. Remember the product that we keep saying we might use someday for this, but we always say we prefer Zoom, will now allow you to live stream meetings directly to YouTube. So this might be a reason to consider going back to Meet, because we could essentially stream this directly to YouTube. However, there is a channel approval process. So maybe we'll talk about that sometime in the future. You know, the arbitrary future that has yet to happen. Okay, at a glance, which is the Pixel notification feature, is apparently getting Ring doorbell video previews. So Amazon has never wanted to put Nest products in their services, or they've been reluctant, and Google doesn't give full integration to Ring. So now they're doing an additional integration, which is they're going to do video previews inside the at-a-glance widget on Pixel devices. So they already support doorbell alerts in there for Nest. So apparently they're going to do it for other things. Yeah. The next one is one that actually got a lot of discussion in my household because, as you know, I'm a big fan of Froggy. Froggy is the Google Weather Frog. Yeah. Yeah, so the Google Weather Frog apparently has stopped wearing his face mask. So during the pandemic, apparently there were shots of Froggy with a mask outside, and now he appears in the widget maskless. Yeah. I don't know. I made one comment on this, which was the comment that I said engendered much discussion in my household. My theory is that he got the Pfizer vaccine. No? Too cringeworthy? Anyway. Bad jokes aside. Let's see. What else do we have on our list here? I think I may have lost Jerry. So we'll wait a moment. Oh, I see what happened. Apparently, the recording ended at 40 minutes because it was a free account. Oh, well, I'll figure that out. Yeah, by the way, it's not supposed to be 40 minutes if it's just two people. It used to be 40 minutes if it was more than two people. Do you hear me? I hear you. It's not me. I didn't do anything. It's you. Why not? Why not? But nothing has changed on my side. Why can you not hear me? You sure you can't hear me? I didn't do anything. I did hit mute and unmute, but... So, I don't know when Zoom changed its rules. Did it change its rules? That's an interesting question. Yeah, but I don't have a paid account anymore. I did it for a bit. Here we are. It says up to 110... Oh, it is 40-minute limit. Okay. It used to be that it said that if you had only 2 people, then there would be no limit. They must have changed that. Anyway, we could always switch over to Google Meet. I'm paying them money. Yeah. Okay. So what were we talking about? Oh yes. Oh, I have to do that again. Okay. I did it. Yeah, I made this whole comment and then realized you weren't there. It wasn't about masking. It was about Froggy discarding his mask. That he must have gotten the Pfizer vaccine. Yeah, I was wondering. I thought you would have gotten that type of bad humor, but you were not there. Bad pun. Yeah, but I'm saying you weren't here to hear it because the Zoom disconnected, and you think there would be a noise for that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, jokes aside, apparently Google Photos is now showing backup quality and file size for images. That's a nice one. Yep. And Google put out a story about how they're helping switch audio between devices. So this is something that they've been talking about for a bit, which is they want to make audio switching on Android to be much smoother. Essentially, the audio switching is for things that can be synced to multiple devices. So it will switch the audio based on your actions. So if you're essentially, the idea is if their example is if you're watching a video on your tablet and you receive a notification on your phone, your headphone audio will not switch to your phone. But if you receive a phone call, it will. So it's essentially being more granular about when it switches between devices if you have things paired to multiple devices or multiple devices paired to the same thing. So again, it's sort of like the automation idea. It's if you can do these things, you can do more. Anyway, moving along. Apparently, the chairwoman of the FCC, Jessica Rosenworcel, has ordered mobile carriers to explain what data they collect on location from customers and how they use it. And you remember a few things that we've discussed recently, which is there is always concern about the fact that these companies have a lot of location data and essentially give it out to anybody who wants it. If they, oh, excuse me, anybody who wants it who has money. Yeah. Yeah. So this is sort of the idea of the FCC is saying, we'd like you to tell us what you do because we're going to make a recommendation of what we think you shouldn't do. So because under current law, carriers are prohibited from using or sharing private information with some exemptions. So the first thing is they think that they're violating the existing law, and also there are some privacy bills that are going through Congress that could preempt that. For example, one particular bill would switch the authority for privacy from the phone industry from the FCC over to the FTC. Yeah, but either way, the questions were what data they collect and retain, why that data is retained for current and former subscribers, how long it's retained for, what safeguards are used to protect it, and where it is stored, and what is disclosed to subscribers about it, and can subscribers ask for that data to not be stored. And a second set of questions about their process and policies for sharing that data with third parties, and that are both law enforcement third parties and non-law enforcement third parties, and whether subscribers are notified of the sharing of their data with non-law enforcement parties. So this is an information gathering question. So again, I'm curious to see what the results are. Allegedly, Android Auto has streamlined its media player. I keep hearing this, but I don't see this new streamlined design. So I am still waiting for the streamlined design that shows me my music and my map at the same time. I would like that. Make it happen. If you dislike congressional action, which I know, Jerry, you have issues with. I have issues with its effectiveness. Apparently, the Democrats in the U.S. are preparing a bill that would bring back net neutrality. As I said, we both have issues, but we have different issues with it. In my case, I don't think that any solution that they ever come up with is the right one. Anyway, at least when it comes to technology, but also several other areas. Apparently, the ACLU has said that the Department of Homeland Security has bought a shocking amount of warrantless phone tracking data. Yeah, as in they bought it. Yeah. No, they were authorized to get it. The question is, should they have been authorized to get it? Yeah. Well, that's clickbait. Yeah. There are two parts to journalism. So there's the fact that you have a journalist who's writing a story, and then you have like the editor who's trying to make the headline attract people. They're not always the same people. So I appreciate journalism in the abstract. The marketing part of it, where they're trying to draw people into stories, I agree with you. I don't like it. Yeah, I'm more going with the whole idea of the Fourth Amendment is to essentially say that the government has some limitations, even though they could get the information, has some limitations on what they can do in this regard. So I don't think that the limitations on the Fourth Amendment have caught up with technology. So this is just a matter of saying, okay, well, the government shouldn't do these things because it is contrary to certain principles, and we have to actually say, well, what does that mean? Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. So here's my hypothetical situation. Okay, so tomorrow you are arrested for, let's say, armed robbery, and the evidence they have is that the person who committed the armed robbery was the same height and build as you, and they have found cell phone data that indicates that you were in the area. But you were in the area because the place that was robbed was down the street from your favorite gelato shop. You get, on the basis of that flimsy information, you are now convicted by a jury of your peers. You are sent to jail. No, that happens not more than you think. Again, that's a whole other unfair. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying that it comes to the point of there should have to be restrictions on some things. I'm not talking about law. I'm talking about the government, which is a powerful organization, has to restrain itself. I'm not talking about legal. I'm saying the government should restrain from certain types of action that would constitute some abuse of its ability to do things. The same as any large organization. So I'm talking to some degree about self-restraint. So the government should say there are certain things we shouldn't do because we can do it. And it's unfair. But again, that's more complicated. No, I was using that as an extreme example. Me personally, I want to know what restrictions they have on it, like anything else. Can they just do, essentially, can they analyze anything about anybody's life, or are they only using it for a purpose that is consistent with their mandate? How would you do that? Yeah. Yeah. Again, the whole idea is I'm not saying that I am against them having certain data. I'm saying that I want them to acknowledge that there are restrictions on things that they shouldn't do. Again, I want them to police themselves. Yeah. This is not an abuse of power, but if, I'll agree with you on that point. No, I'm not. I'm saying that I am upset that this is not something that we've discussed as a country and said what they should and shouldn't do. Once you don't, again, I'll back to your parameters. Once you do not give parameters to people who we as a society have given power, they do abuse it. So, yeah. So I'm saying this is a organization that we have set up as a country to do something. We should tell it this is what we want you to do because we hired these people. I'm not talking about us individually, but they're government employees. Anyway, I'm not. I'm saying I want to make sure they aren't. That's the concept of who watches the watchers. I think we should regularly question what people are doing. And I think that's an appropriate thing. That's accountability. There's a whole office in the government that is called the Government Accountability Office. It's supposed to hold government officials accountable for following the rules. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Do I know enough to know whether or not they're doing their job? It hasn't upset me. Upset me, I'd be out in the streets protesting. I'm saying I think that this warrants more review. Review isn't me saying they should be stopped from doing something. This is me saying we should find out what they're doing and find out if they're doing the right thing. If they're not doing the right thing, we should do something. If they're doing the right thing, fine. They've been vindicated. Great. So upset, there are plenty of things that are going on in this country that make me upset. I'm not sure this is necessarily one of them by itself. This is, oh, an organization might be doing something, government or otherwise. Let's find out, and then we can be upset about it or not upset about it. By the way, if you're doing the right thing, and this is sort of the argument, should you, if somebody says that that they think you're not doing the right thing, shouldn't you welcome the opportunity to be vindicated? I know it's a slippery slope because just the accusation of doing the wrong thing can have negative consequences. Yeah, I agree with you. As I said, that's back to the extreme again. And again, it's one of those things where it's complicated because again, just the accusation of anything has a negative effect. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that because that's been the argument about encryption. Why should you have strong encryption if you have nothing to hide? Yeah, because the counter argument is I don't have anything to hide. I'm worried about other people butting into my business, which could have a negative effect on me, which has nothing to do with me hiding anything. Anyway, moving along, let's talk about search and suggestion options in Gmail. So this is from the latest Google Workspace updates, where apparently Gmail now has accurate and circumstantial search suggestions. So when searching for a conversation file or contact information, it's going to try to give you better and more contextual contact suggestions with intent matching. And personalized suggestions based on historical exchanges, such as how often you interact with a person. Yep. And if you are a fan of wearable devices, apparently Qualcomm has announced new wearable chipsets. So this would be the Snapdragon W5 Generation 1 and the W5 Plus Generation 1. And apparently I've heard that Mobvoi is going to be one of the first manufacturers to make use of the chip. You know I have my opinion of Mobvoi. Nobody's ever corrected me, but am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, well, if anybody thinks I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, they should tell me. Moving along, Google apparently has, and we've mentioned this before, DNS over HTTPS. It's been a constant thing where apparently now it's considered available in Android 11 and later. So they've done this by essentially update without updating the OS. So it's coming through one of the other types of updates. So if you want DNS over HTTPS, you can now get that. No more waiting for an OS upgrade, which is always good. If you are a user of Nova Launcher, there's been a lot of drama there. So not only is Nova Launcher's 8.0 beta out with a essentially a new material use style design and a redesigned settings menu, but apparently Nova Launcher has joined Branch. So Branch has acquired Nova Launcher and hired the creator of Nova Launcher and their community manager as employees. And again, that's always a concern when one company acquires another. And Branch, their product apparently is a search and discovery product that makes it easy to search across apps for pages inside. So, not quite sure what they want with Nova Launcher, and even they have, even their does Branch want with Nova Launcher? Their only statement has essentially been they want the talent and they want Nova Launcher. So it isn't a talent acquisition. They want Nova Launcher. It's not clear why they want Nova Launcher, but they're saying that they want to get feedback on features before they scale them. And they don't plan on making money directly from Nova or from the community. So we acquired this product. We sort of want to use it as a test bed. We don't know. We're not going to make any money off of it. Don't worry. I'm not saying I am worried, but I'm just saying I think there are a lot of big question marks there that we may find out later we don't like the answers to. Or maybe not. So you could always switch over to Lawnchair. But one of the core developers of Lawnchair has ceased his involvement because apparently he found out that they were taking code from the proprietary Pixel Launcher app. So essentially, the developer made an announcement that he found out that some of the code was reverse engineered from the Pixel Launcher app. So a lot of the design language was inspired by the Pixel Launcher. It was designed to be an open source Pixel Launch style launcher. However, I think this particular developer and other people didn't think that they actually used the code. They just wrote code that looked similar. So he has left the project because he doesn't think that portions of code from a proprietary app should be used in an open source app. Now, he didn't know that this was happening or where this code came from, and apparently they are going to remove the code. But again, so two concerning developments about two popular open source launchers. Nova Launcher is concerned not necessarily that anything bad has happened, but it's always a concern when a company buys something and says, we're not going to do anything with it. Nothing is going to change. Anytime somebody says nothing is going to change, you usually think things are going to change. That's usually the truth. If you do have a Pixel, though, the new Magic Eraser feature is here. So this is the one that allows you to remove objects from photos. Yeah, so it can blend better into the background. Okay. Yeah. I haven't really played with it, but I obviously have it somewhere on my phone. Google put out something on their blog about living in a multi-device world. And this one comes from May, but I wanted to talk about it again. So, sort of the concept of what Google is trying to do is integrate all of its devices into this work together philosophy. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, and this was announced around I/O this year, is that we're seeing some of those things come to fruition. We saw the audio switching that they promised there, and we're seeing a few other things. So I want to keep an eye on this focus for Google with Android, which is integrating multiple devices. So I wanted to sort of highlight it again. Anyway, moving along. Lawmakers have pushed the FTC to clean up the VPN industry. So this is sort of the problem. Once again, several congresswoman and a senator wrote a letter urging the FTC to address deceptive practices in the VPN industry. So they want the FTC to clamp down on providers that engage in deceptive advertising or make false assertions about the range of their privacy. Apparently, they're citing research from Consumer Reports that indicates 75% of the most popular VPNs misrepresented their products or made misleading claims that could give individuals a false sense of security. They're specifically concerned about abortion seekers, but this is sort of the general thing where an organization is concerned that there are essentially organizations making false claims about privacy. So if you look at the Consumer Reports article, which is what inspired this, that dates from last December, what exactly they're concerned. Let me see if I can find the list. I'm just looking for it in here. I saw it earlier. Some VPNs can actually make things worse for your data privacy and security, was their statement. And they wrote a whole, a 48-page article on this, or study, about what was problematic. And they looked at a lot of these and sort of said, well, it's not necessarily safer. So all of these companies say they looked at what protocols were used. They gave variants to VPNs with poor IPsec or OpenVPN configurations, pre-shared keys, or PPTP. They can get partial credit for good or no configurations and no pre-shared keys. So essentially, they went through and said, okay, who's doing the best in terms of security recommendations? Who's actually living up to their assurances about what their product is like? So apparently, Mozilla's VPN scored the highest for protocols, along with NordVPN, CyberGhost, PIA, Surfshark. And apparently, IPVanish, Kaspersky, and Private Tunnel scored the lowest. Kaspersky was using PPTP, which has been mostly deprecated. So a lot of stuff there in regards to their analysis, where what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, what were they tracking, what were they storing, etc. So the idea is, if you are signing up for a VPN, the FTC should make sure that their claims about what they do are honest. So this is a false advertising play. Anyway, I think companies should be required to tell the truth, but I am aware of your opinion that the government isn't going to make them do it successfully, and I agree with you. Successfully is... Yeah. I don't think it's weekly I don't think it's weekly inspections. I think it's more issuing guidance. And then if they do get a complaint, then investigating. But I don't know. We'll find out what the FTC ends up doing. But not always the execution. Well, I think the part we've always agreed on is that the government has not proven they're good at doing that sort of thing. Let's talk about something I didn't know. So I saw this article in The Verge, and I figured if I didn't know this, and the people who wrote The Verge didn't know this, then some people that we might be broadcasting to might not know it. Amazon will recycle small electronics for free. I did not know that. So, good to know. If you want to get rid of a device, they'll pay for shipping. So worth knowing. Well, that's the trade-in program. Yeah, but Amazon Recycling, offered by Retech, will actually send. They'll send you a box. You can send them devices you want to recycle. They'll send you a shipping label. You can put it in, and they'll do it. So, as long as it's a small device, they'll take your e-readers, tablets, streaming media devices, smart home devices, home security devices, cell phones, fitness trackers, Bluetooth. They'll take Dash devices, Amazon devices, device covers, chargers, cables, keyboards, mice, video consoles and peripherals, and other small electronics. I'd get a box from them and send it. You can't, yeah, well, especially since what I can't do, I can no longer throw out electronics in New York City. New York City does not allow you to put electronics in the garbage. The problem is the city has an event that, well, if they see anything on the curb, they won't pick it up, and they'll give you a ticket. But anyway, they do have periodic electronic events. One time I went to one of these electronic events sponsored by the local Department of Sanitation to get rid of some old CRT TVs that you're not allowed to put on the curb. And it was in the local park, so not like a tiny one block park, like a acres and acres size park. And there was a road leading into the park, and it was backed up for an hour. So you had to wait for an hour in your car, wasting gas in order to give them your old electronic devices and other things that won't be picked up. Wouldn't it have be easier if once a month they picked up electronics? They did a run around the normal delivery zone and said on the last Thursday of the month we'll take your electronics, rather than making people wait in the park for hours. But anyway, I'd rather send it to Amazon. Let's see, what else do we have here? The FCC has proposed a new broadband standard of 100 megabits down, 20 up, because technology is now capable of doing faster than the current standard of 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up. So, fine. By the way, the only thing that a standard does here is set a goal. It doesn't really. It says that if you don't hit this, you can't say that you're providing broadband, and that doesn't really do anything. You can't make people provide broadband. It just says you can't call it that. Still internet. It just you have to admit to everybody that it's too slow for the modern world. If you're a Facebook user, apparently they might soon let you create multiple profiles with the same account. Yeah. What happened to we want your Facebook identity to be your real identity? I guess they're desperate for money now. If you are a user of Chrome OS, there's no longer a space in that. So it used to be Chrome Space OS, and now it is Chrome OS. No space. Wink. Yeah, that's why. Remember, we're Google watchers, and we don't get it. Yep. If you remember, probably a lot in their marketing department. They probably studied it a lot. And if you didn't think Wink was dead, it's been down for a bit now, and apparently they keep saying they're working on a fix. So if you didn't leave Wink already, you probably should leave Wink. Yeah. So a 2-week outage is not necessarily... And it was a great device. That's the really thing that annoys me. The original and the next generation Wink Hub were a great device. However, it did not work out. Yeah. If you have a Ring doorbell, apparently Amazon has admitted that they've been giving law enforcement doorbell data without user consent, despite the fact that they have said that they would always ask for consent before giving out doorbell data to law enforcement. So there are a lot of questions related to that. Again, we're back to, if I have a device in my house that's constantly watching the street and I don't want to share that information with anybody, then my provider should not be doing it. I am a customer, by the way. If I'm paying for, it's one thing if I bought the item and I'm getting a free cloud service. If you are a subscriber to the Ring service, or you're a subscriber to any of the doorbell services where they make you pay to store your stuff, you're a customer and they're sharing the information that you have paid them to host with other people. That seems the opposite of what you would want the company to do. Yeah. Well, that's why, I'm tempted to. I've been slowly I moved away from Wise when I felt that they weren't protecting my data, and moved over to Eufy, which does store data and could access my data, but it stores the actual video on a card inside the camera, so I feel a little better. But technically, they could access it, and if I find out that they're not taking good care of my data, then I'll keep moving on until I find somebody who satisfies me. Well, even each other, we're not always. Yeah. Yeah, and if a company, even though I use things that do have cloud integrations as well, if I find out that those cloud integrations are not doing what I want, I'll go pay and replace. I'll rip out a bunch of items and replace them. Moving along, the former Cloud Ready software, which is now called Chrome OS Flex, apparently it still has the space in it. Not for long, I guess. That has moved out of beta, but still, again, there are some limitations on it. Not much to say about that. Well, no, it only supports certain items. You have to fill out a form to get it. It's free to use, but again, there might not be support indefinitely. So I have a philosophy: if I buy a Chromebook and it stops being supported, I will just wipe the software and put Linux on. Yeah, I have to rip one open that expired last month. Anyway, a few other things. Oh, excuse me, I accidentally missorted this and have a duplicate story here. Here's the final story of the thing. Apparently, David Warner has passed away. I was sad. I enjoyed his various work. I have to work on my sorting, though, because I don't know how I ended up selecting two different versions of the same story. But anyway, David Warner was somebody who was known to me as somebody who watched a lot of Star Trek movies. He appeared in 2 different Star Trek movies. Do you remember him, Jerry? Did the meeting cut out again? It did. That is really annoying. So I have a choice. I can start the meeting up again, or not. But this may get me to leave Zoom. I'm starting to get annoyed. This must be a new thing because we never had this before. Again with you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I did just try the mute unmute thing again. At least I'm recording. Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me now? Okay. I just put you into the mic on the computer for a moment. Can you hear me? You blame Linux? You're just trying to get me annoyed now, aren't you? Can you hear me, Jerry? No. You're this is a conspiracy. Can you hear me now? Yeah, because that's the one built into the system, and I don't. But I have a recording going on my end with the full quality audio, so I can always splice it. Yeah, the only question I have to ask you is, are we about to give up on Zoom? Okay, if you have a paid room, then so much more the power to you. You'll just have to set up an invite. Okay. Other than that, I suggest we adjourn. I will be here being sad about the death of David Warner, who was in 2 Star Trek movies and whose performance I enjoyed. I'm recording, don't worry. So I'm sad about that, and I will continue being sad about it next week. Yeah, I am sad when good actors pass, who I enjoyed their work. So next week we will be here at the usual time. Hopefully no other crises will happen, and I will once again get annoyed at various technology. Come on. Okay, I have full recording on my side. I always do at least 2 versions just in case there's a failure. Okay, bye.